Over 10 years ago, a series of gates linking the world to alternate realms appeared. These realms contain different types of monsters immune to conventional weapons, and only hunters who have awakened extraordinary abilities can combat them. They are ranked according to the magical powers they possess, with the highest being S rank and the lowest E rank. Once a hunter has awakened, no amount of individual training can change their ranking, or so they thought. On a Navy ship, the officers are worried, but they realize they have no choice but to leave the monster invasion to the hunters. One of the hunters lured the red ant monsters out of the forest where hunters of the Jeju Island Raiding Squad gathered to eliminate them. However, things quickly took a wrong turn as the hunters began to perish one by one. The ants were too strong, and they ended up becoming their food until Byung-Gyu, one of the higher-ups, arrived, pushing one of the ants away from a hunter who was getting devoured. He then proceeded to use healing magic on the hunter, but more ants attacked from behind, prompting Eunseok and Yoonho to intervene, taking down the ants pretty easily. The hunters are relieved as the S-rank hunters show up, but then the leader of the swarm, a giant white ant, appeared. Eunseok and Yoonho face it and soon take it out without much effort, but more white ants show up to confront the pair, and the two eagerly charge towards them. Meanwhile, Choi Jong-In in a city nearby observes their battle in the forest, while a horde of red and white ants approaches from the distance. He then launches a powerful flame attack on the ants, killing mostly the red ones, before ordering his own team to charge at the surviving ants. Fast forward to 3 years later, in a construction site, a raid is about to begin. Kim sees Park Ji-sul, an acquaintance who he thought had quit hunting. Park tells him he needs money as his wife just had a second kid, and while they catch up, Sung Jin-Woo arrives, and other members greet him. Park wonders who he is, and Kim tells him he's an E-hunter who joined after he left and is infamously known as the weakest hunter. The guild association wouldn't assign Jinwoo to a dangerous raid, which means the dungeon they are about to enter wouldn't be dangerous, thus the reason everyone treated him like a big deal. Jinwoo overhears them talking about him, but he accepts it as the truth. He meets his friend Ju-hee, who scolds him for getting injured again. He tells her his last raid had no healer since everyone else was high-ranked. Ju-hee complains about how thoughtless it was not taking a healer with them, but Jinwoo tells her it's his fault he's so weak. Song Chi-yul, the team leader, assembles the team, and he introduces himself before leading them into the gate of the dungeon. Sung Jin-woo takes out his weapon, a cheap knife with no magic power, as it's what he could afford. Stealing himself, he then enters the portal. Meanwhile, the Korean Association chairman, Baek Yoonho, speaks about the values of the mana stones to his assistant, Woo Jinchul. Essence stones are only obtained from defeating dungeon beasts. Currently, in the dungeon, Jinwoo is excited he managed to kill a goblin and get an essence stone, but then a goblin attacks, and he manages to block thanks to a timely warning from Ju-hee, but his weapon was starting to crack. The goblin wields its machete, and Jinwoo struggles to dodge. He then attempts to stab the magical beast, but to his surprise, his knife shatters on impact, and the goblin retaliates, stabbing him back in the stomach, pushing Jinwoo to the wall. Thankfully, Ji-sul intervenes, taking out the goblin, and Ju-hee follows, healing his stab wound. The team eventually takes out the dungeon boss and they celebrate, with Jinwoo observing while he recovers. Ju-hee tells him if he keeps risking his life, he will end up dead. Jinwoo apologizes, but Ju-hee yells at him, telling him she's only worried, which causes Jinwoo to look away, conflicted. His expression hardened as he watched his team members complain about the little rewards they earned. He had only managed to kill a single monster, gaining a low-rank crystal that cost a pathetic amount, an amount not worth dying for. Out of the blue, one of the team members signals the team, notifying the rest about a passageway he found. The team realizes it's a rare double dungeon, and there might be more loot inside. So Song, the leader, proposes they vote on whether to inform the association and lose a massive amount of possible loot or risk it and handle it themselves. They vote to a tie, with the two opposing sides neck and neck, but one person hadn't voted, Jinwoo. Everything now depends on his decision. Jinwoo grasps the crystal in his hands, contemplating. His father was gone, and he had the responsibility of taking care of the family, so he makes a decision to proceed. Now, in the building of the Hunters Guild, a young man is seen standing in front of a machine that tests the ranking of newly awakened hunters. Done with his test, the young man leaves and walks into another room. Meanwhile, a man in a suit is on a phone call with Choi Jong-In, telling him he had managed to sign 1 B rank and 2 C rank hunters. Jong-In is pleased with the report and tells him to continue his scouting. Outside the guild, in the streets, two thieves on a motorcycle attempt to flee after stealing a woman's bag, but a lady wearing a pink cap stands in their way. As their bike reaches her, she does a flip, taking the bag off them, causing one of them to fall, and the bike loses balance and crashes, taking out the second thief. She gives the stolen bag back to the owner, who recognizes her as the S-rank hunter Cha Hae-In. Her action catches the attention of the nearby citizens, who gather around her, making her nervous, and she flees, using her agility to jump on the buildings nearby. Back to Jinwoo and his team. Ju-hee scolds him for choosing to continue despite his injuries, and Jinwoo apologizes, but she tells him to take her out to dinner as an apology, which surprises him. Suddenly, the walking stops as they had finally arrived at the end of the tunnel, where they saw a giant door. This intimidates them, and some begin to express doubt and fear, but Kim decides to go as they had walked for too long to quit. Song agrees with him, and they walked into the room which lights up with blue flames. The room has an atmosphere of an ancient temple and is surrounded by old giant statues, some holding weapons and others musical instruments. There is an even bigger giant statue sitting on a throne, which creeps out the group, confused as to why the place appears to be filled with ancient statues and not magic beasts. Mr. Song then found something beneath his feet and saw it was a magic formation that looked like nothing he had ever seen. One of the hunters then calls his attention to one of the statues which looked different from the others. It had a pair of wings and held a stone slate that held some instructions, which Song begins to read. Jinwoo listens to the contents as Mr. Song reads out, but Ju-hee tugs at his arm, a pale expression on her face as she notifies Jinwoo that she just caught the biggest statue in this room staring at them, but he assures her that she must be seeing things. In the meantime, Song, still reading, states the last law which said those who don't follow the rule will not leave the place alive. It was then the door loudly shuts itself, making the team panic. One of the hunter who had suggested they didn't enter, tries to leave in a hurry. Song, the leader, tries to warn him to stop, but it's too late as one of the statues beside the entrance moves, swinging its steel mace, brutally slaughtering the poor hunter. His headless body powerlessly collapses to the ground, which horrifies the rest of the hunters, who began to scream and panic. The statue then moves back to position, and Jinwoo is shocked that a hunter stronger than him managed to get killed in an instant. Song then mentions that if one of the statues could move, then what about the rest? Breathing heavily, Jinwoo forced his stiff neck to turn around so he could look behind him at the statue that Ju-hee warned him about. At first nothing happened, but all of a sudden, its eyeballs looked down at him, glowing dangerously. Reacting just in time, Jinwoo screams for his comrades to duck as the statue's eye begins to unleash an attack. A destructive light beam launches at the hunters, razes the ground, and incinerates a few of them to ashes. Opening their eyes, the hunters' horror only furthered, and Jinwoo realizes that they are in grave danger. And with that, we conclude this episode.